Today's video is brought to you by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports app. And when you use my code right now, HMA, they'll put $50 in your account when you put a $5 lineup down. Hard to beat that. They've got baseball, basketball, heck, they've even got the seasonal picks up here for the NFL season. Terms and conditions do apply. Please do remember to gamble responsibly. Hello there, and welcome to what will be, I guess, the final episode of the B&B show here of the season before we kind of go away into, as Brendan says, hibernation mode and come back a couple months. We've got our final bit of news we want to turn over today, which is kind of just our back and forth on this schedule drop that went yesterday. I know we kind of had our first initial reaction yesterday, but I wanted to have Brandon back in here to be able to kind of get more little intricate thoughts, get a little bit deeper into the schedule a little bit as we look at this and just kind of turn over some things that, sometimes you need a night to kind of think this stuff through and kind of look at what the opponents are doing and where things are at just to get a real full assessment of things. But first off, it's great to have you in the house, Brendan. How goes it?
Yeah, it's going pretty good, man. I mean, it's still the off season after winning the Super Bowl. So there's only so much negative you can really feel after something like that.
Indeed. Championship off seasons are very nice because you feel satiated and, hey, we got it, we did it, and we're still a good team. And we don't even have I think sometimes you get championship teams where it's all of your parts have gone, right? Everybody gets paid, everybody's gone. You lose half your squad. You're like, oh, this is going to be a rebuild. We're going to have to kind of reset this a bit. You don't feel that way here with this team. And we had a schedule come out yesterday. There's always a lot of worry about this. I think it's a very important time of year. You and I have done it for many years on looking at these schedules, and that it does determine and dictate a lot of, how you can kind of expect the season to go from kind of a beats standpoint, rhythm standpoint, what you're up against. Not too shabby from my perspective, Brendan. Where did you stand at a first blush on this schedule?
Yeah, I would say that overall this is a pretty good schedule for the Seahawks. There is one notable brutal element to this schedule that I think we'll get to later today, but for the most part, I think this sets up fairly well. And there's definitely a strong possibility that this team gets off to like a historically good start against this schedule, in my opinion. I think that's one thing that we're going to talk about as we go through here. I think that this could really be off to the races for the first few months of the year if the team stays relatively healthy and lives up to expectations. There's a possibility here that you end up getting off to a really phenomenal start. And to me, it's all just going to kind of come down to Brian Fleury. Is he going to be ready to hit the ground running with his play calling? If we do that, then I think that this is going to set up very well for us. That is the one thing that I remain a little bit unsure about. But I think this schedule breaks out quite well for the Seahawks. And given the fact that we have a slightly harder than average schedule this year numerically, statistically, I think it broke pretty well for us.
Yeah, I mean, that was my feeling on it too, is a bit that it is one where the opponents were locked in. You're going to get a first place schedule, and then the opponents of the divisions you're going to have to play were going to be what they were. And that meant that the schedule was going to be reasonably harder than it was last year. It was going to be that way for the rest of kind of the division too, so it is a little bit more equal. But I do agree with you that you're going to have to kind of make your headway here early on into the schedule, because I do think there's probably going to be a loss or two at the end of the schedule in there, and that if you're this wouldn't be a thing if you weren't really, as I'm sure you've already started to think about this, is you're thinking about that #1 seed. The power of that bye week. And if you're going to want to get it off this schedule as we first look at it, as you say, I think we both agree, you've got to kind of in part dominate the front side schedule here that's got a lot of headway to be made.
Right. That's exactly kind of how I'm feeling about it. And I don't want to get into the exact mechanics of the schedule yet. We'll have plenty of time later in the show for this. But I do look at this first, I guess you would say 10 games. And it kind of really stands out to me how much the NFL kind of wanted to get the lower stakes games out of the way early and then really clear the runway for the high stakes games later in the season post bye week. Like, think about it like this. And this is something that I thought about when I was looking at it last night. We play 5 games against the AFC this year, right? We play the AFC West and then we play the Patriots. All of those 5 games are in the first 10 game stretch. And then after that, you have nothing but NFC teams after the bye week. And also, I believe other than the Cowboys and Giants, they're also all playoff teams from last year.
Yeah, no, that is correct. I mean, to your point on this as well, I kind of felt like I'm sure you heard a little bit of people getting a little bit of dismayed with the fact that the Rams were coming in the final 2 games the last 3 weeks. But my take on that, to your point of the NFL kind of acknowledging this schedule and where the conferences are at, who's the top dog in this conference, my read on that was that they're acknowledging here a little bit that they expect the Seattle Seahawks and Rams to be the two teams at the end duking it out in so many ways, and not just maybe for this division, but because they wouldn't necessarily draw that just for a division race. They'll draw this as well because they know these might be very much the two teams that do just what they did last year, which is once again have to face each other even 2 weeks from then in maybe a conference championship. And how cool would that be as having them play 3 times in 7 weeks? And I can kind of see what the NFL is doing there. But do you think I'm off my rocker on this one, or is there probably a little bit of something to that?
No, I think that that's got to be what's at play here. Now, as a fan, I don't know how to feel about playing the same team 3 times in potentially a 4-week or 5-week span. I'm not necessarily overly enthusiastic about that, but I can see why the NFL might want it. Like the NFL could be compelled by that easily. So yeah, and on top of that, you have a team like the Panthers in Carolina, week 17. That's a team that I know they're not going to be great this year, but they could be playing for the division at the end of the season very easily. So the Eagles, I think we all expect that the Eagles are going to at least be a factor this year. Maybe they won't be stellar, but they should at least be good. And even I know it's week 12, and I know we're not into December yet at that point. It's very late November. That's right after Thanksgiving. But playing in San Fran, that's also one of the biggest games of the year. So they really backloaded this. And on the one hand, there is a little bit of frustration there maybe because it's like, man, you're really just kind of setting us up to have to take all these punches right at the very end of the season. But at the same time, from the NFL's perspective, that probably makes for the best possible television.
Well, and I think as well, when you look at the Niners and the Rams schedule, I think that they did very similar things to them as well. I think the Rams got the schedule set up just like us in so many ways to have their the ground they make, get it where they rocket out the starting blocks, and then they've got that back 4 or 5 games that's kind of similar to us. I think the Cowboys, Eagles are in there, and where it's going to be tough for them too. So that's the least thing that I'm encouraged by with this is that it does feel like that the other 2 teams in our division are both facing the similar kind of end season gauntlet. It's going to be weird with the Ram thing because you could have a situation where it's a 1 and 2 seed playing each other, or if the division's down a little bit next year and somebody else rises up in the NFC, that it's like, oh, you have to play them in the first round or second round. It's like it could come back really fast having to play them, but it will make for an interesting outlook on the season, Brendan, as we're going through, just knowing that those 2 Ram games are just sort of sitting there like big shadows eventually that we're going to have to be running into as the season plays out.
Yeah. And of course, the other side of it is when you're playing that late in the season, you don't necessarily have a super firm idea of what the teams are even going to look like. Like the Seahawks could be unrecognizable by the time we get to that deep in the season. So could the Rams. So we're speculating here, admittedly, but I do think that it's very likely that both teams are going to be very good and both teams are going to be playing for a lot at that point in the season. And I get it. I understand it. So I am I get it. I don't necessarily love the idea of playing all those tough games right at the end of the year, but at the same time, it's not supposed to be easy for a team that's the defending champion anyway. Heavy lays the crown. So the other side of this is you get a lot of very winnable games early when you're probably going to be at your weakest because of the whole Brian Fleury thing. And that is the one, I think, big caveat with this season. Brian Fleury might not be ready to hit the ground running and he might struggle early on, but you're getting games against teams like the Cardinals twice. You're getting the 49ers at home. At least you're getting a Chiefs team that I don't really think they're going to be that good at that point. And the Raiders, and you get the Cardinals again. And even the tougher games you have early in the season are at home. Like you play the Bears, but you play them at home. You get, the Chargers, they could be good this year, but you're getting the Chargers at home. The one really tough game in the first 10 in terms of both matchup and circumstance is Denver. And that's an AFC game. So even if you lose that game, it's not the end of the world. So I think that there's a lot to like about that early part where you could just pile up wins and not necessarily need to win every single game at the end.
My take, too, is that Bronco game is probably the toughest game by how it's set up on the schedule of any. It's coming off the division rival game against the Niners, and then it's going to be on a short week, and you got to go to Mile High, and you got to go to Mile High in that thin ass air, tired with that body. I think that that's a 1 week where it just looks like of all the games on the schedule, that's one where the NFL has kind of set us up for now.
Yeah, I do feel that way. At least it's not in September, though. September is harder to win in Denver because I think the players are still getting into shape, and it's a lot harder to play in that altitude early in the year. You'd much rather do it a little bit later. So at least it's not September. But yeah, that's a rough one. It's a Thursday night game, short week on the road in Denver. I think Denver will be good this year. I do. I imagine they'll at least be good. Maybe they'll be even better than that. The only thing I'll say is that they are a team that blitzes a lot. And last year, Seattle was a team that did a very good job punishing teams that blitzed a lot. But yeah, that does kind of feel like the setup here. And I don't want to overcommit to anything here, but I do think that it's a reasonable goal to set to go 9-1 in those first 10 games and then have Denver be the one kind of set up for like, okay, that's going to be a loss and we're just going to have to, take it on the chin a little bit.
Yeah. I just kind of wonder if even, when going into these Thursday night games, there's always a lot of care as to whether or not you should play guys. And if it's coming off week where it's been hard, maybe you're just resting a dude. You're just kind of going, hey, is what it is. Everybody's got to deal with this in the league at some point or another. And our answer on this is not to push guys through and then burn them out through the rest of the games, but kind of give them that extra week of rest then.
Yeah.
And I especially with some of the vets on this roster, you could kind of run into that game being that way where Mike kind of tactically chooses that as kind of that spot in the schedule to give him a little bit of that blow. I don't know. Just kind of wonder on that one with it. It's
an AFC matchup too, by the way. If you lose that game, it's not the end of the world.
No, it's completely within reason to be like, that's all right. As long as, especially like you said, if you've taken care of the rest of the business on the schedule, it's not as much a worrisome thing to go down. Did you feel like the rivals got better schedules, easier schedules, more set up for success than us?
I know the Rams play primetime the first 5 weeks of the season, right?
Yeah.
We got, okay, let me take a look here. Okay, like one of those games is against the Giants, so that's not really I don't think the Giants are going to be that good this year. They're going to be probably a little bit better, but I don't think they're going to be good. But yeah, they got 49ers, Giants, Broncos, Eagles, Bills, and then things get a little bit softer for them. So they're a little bit more front-loaded than we are, I think. They're a little bit more, they have a lot of their tougher games up front, but their back end is also kind of tough as well. They play us twice. The Buccaneers, I don't know what to think of the Buccaneers this year, but they could be okay.
They should at least be solid. I mean, they may not be like, but they're going to be, I think they're every bit as strong as Carolina is.
Yeah.
And, as you're look at that end game run, I mean, that's kind of a similar run that we got at the end of our year with what the Rams have.
Yeah. Now, I don't think the Cowboys will be good, but they'll probably be annoying. Like that offense could be really, really annoying to deal with. The Chiefs in December could be better. Like if Mahomes works himself into shape over the course of the year, the Chiefs could be a bigger problem by the end of the year. I still don't know if I see it though. I that secondary is really, really thin right now. I don't know if they can overcome that. But yeah, I would say that I mean, obviously, and this is just the product of playing in such a tough division. The team that really kind of got they got it done dirty was the Cardinals here. They have the hardest schedule in the league by far. I think they're like double-digit underdogs in their first 11 games right now. I don't know if you've seen that or not, but apparently they are. I'm sorry. It's at least 7-point underdogs in their first.
I was going to say they're underdogs in every game.
Yeah, they are underdogs in every game. But they could not even play that badly and still start like 1-12 or something. So, I mean, they're the team that gets it dirty. The Niners, I haven't really looked at their schedule that much. I know that theirs is on paper softer than ours or the Rams. Let me take a look here. So, okay, Rams, and then they get Dolphins, Cardinals, home against the Broncos. So that's obviously a benefit to them. Seahawks. Man, they could get off to a pretty strong start here, and then at the end, it does get a little bit rougher. But yeah, the Niners are clearly the team I think here with the easiest, the easiest setup.
Well, and I think that Niner team the Rams too being a little bit front loaded here, along with having kind of the finish like we have, is that they get that 49er team week 1. So you're going to get Greenlaw, Bosa, McCaffrey, Trent Williams at his age where he's at out there, you're going to get the full collection of what they have to offer. Mike Evans, right? And I think even as you get into what is it, like, week 5-ish or whatever, I wonder if even then there's a couple guys that have been peeled off the top of the deck a little bit at that point, just, by the nature of the age of this roster and what's going on. But with that said, Rams got to go out to Australia and play the 49ers that first game with the full tilt of what they got, to offer. Then they've got to come back to the Bills into week 2. I know it's Monday night, so they get a little bit of extra rest for that Australian game, but then you got to come right back, and I think it might be on the road as well in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. So I feel like the Rams do have, there's some difficulty in there. Nobody got some great easy schedule, and this is why also, Brendan, in my opinion, the Cardinals should lean into the tank. The schedule is well suited to lean into the tank and go get yourself the best quarterback in next year's draft.
Yeah, and it's a draft where you're probably going to have some really nice quarterbacks to choose from. So I think it's probably about right. But yeah, overall, I would say that you look at this Niners schedule and it does seem like they kind of got the easier path here. But I don't think any of these schedules are necessarily easy, like you said.
No, it's just the nature, and this is the way that this worked last year when we looked at the schedule in advance and this played out to form. So people, when they try to go, well, you don't know how stuff's going to play out, like this stuff does kind of play out to form. We could look at the schedule last year and say, holy crap, the Niners have the easiest schedule in the league, but every team in this division, with the exception of the Rams playing a first place schedule, who I think had like the 11th toughest schedule or 10th toughest schedule, everybody was having the easier schedule because of the nature of the divisions you were playing really as much as anything else. And so this year just happens to be a bit of a different one where I think you're playing stronger divisions between what you had in the prior. And that, makes a little bit of a difference on this one as far as that goes, but everyone's got to deal with it. It's not just a Hawk problem. It's everyone's got to deal with it kind of problem.
Right. And again, these are all based off our assumptions, right? For all we know, the Chiefs are going to be terrible this year. For all we know, the Broncos are going to take a big step back. We don't know. So we got to give stuff time to play out.
Yeah, most definitely. But I think you bring up something like, the Broncos and blitzing. Broncos are a heavy blitzing team. They've been that way for the last couple of years. They're going to continue to be so. We punish that. I think the Commanders defense, for instance, we think about these matchups. I confirmed this last year it was last year on a behind enemy line session with a guy, and I was breaking down the defense, and it was just Carroll's defense. I was breaking down to him, Brendan. And he goes, yeah, that's our defense. So Quinn's not changed. And we saw that play out in the game itself. That was prior to the week. Then the game played out and you saw just that, where again, you have now a guy that is going to go up against this kind of offense, the Shanahan offense that gave the Carroll defenses fits. And that gives them another sort of inroad game stylistically for the type of team you're playing that, on a few of these matchups, I think can help you in that, in that manner. In that Bronco game, I am putting it down to as a loss, but it doesn't mean it's like a guaranteed loss. It's just kind of how I'm sort of structuring the wins and losses on this schedule.
And on some level, as Seahawks fans, we should kind of be expecting the team to win every game they play. We know they're not going to, but we should go into every game with the thought that we can win this game because we have this thing and that thing and the other thing. Every game is winnable. This isn't like some of the late stage Carroll teams where we would just go into games sometimes and just think to ourselves, not this week. That's not really something this team should have to deal with because they are that good. Again, they're going to lose games, of course, but there is this, I think that even against a team like Denver, look, they've got issues too. I don't think they're nearly as good as the record indicated they were last year. I think they were one of the luckier teams in NFL history with all those one-score games they won. So, it's not a guarantee.
Right out of the playoffs.
right, exactly.
No, it's true. And to your point, I mean, we talked about the Cardinals being, not favored in any one of their games. Seattle in many ways is probably favored in every single one of their games, with maybe the exception of the Rams and the Eagles game. Maybe
we might be underdogs I think we're underdogs in Denver because it's a short week.
That could make some sense.
Yep. Yeah, and then we're probably underdogs in LA. I don't know about the Eagles. We'll see. The Eagles were not very good last year. We'll see how much better they are this year.
Well, and they're going to move AJ Brown, so it becomes Romeo Dobbs, Mekhi Lemon,
no, not Dobbs,
and Devontae Smith.
Yeah,
not Dobbs. No. They traded for somebody. I thought another receiver out there.
I think it's Smith and Mekhi Lemon, and not much else.
I thought they had grabbed somebody. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, Dobbs signed with New
Dontavian Wicks was the guy they brought in. I confused Dante. I get all those Green Bay receivers. they all run together the same for me, Brendan.
Right.
So you're gonna. I mean, he's not dangerous, but Hollywood Brown, Dontavian Wicks, Devontae Smith, Mekhi Lemon, yeah, they can kind of cobble together. They're gonna try to run the ball a bunch. But I mean, isn't this the year that as I looked at this, one of the things that I like about this schedule, Brendan, is that when you talk about the Eagles, you are talking about there being some age on the roster in some spots. Like Lane Johnson's going into year, 17, 18, and injuries were a factor last year for him. Saquon Barkley's hit that spot, in his career, carry-wise, touch-wise, where you'd start to expect him to slow down a little bit. Brown will be out of the mix, A.J. Brown at that point, so you're a little weaker, as far as that goes. Even Jordan Mailata, the other left tackle, is starting to get a little bit older to the left side, and their interior is not as strong as it's been when they were going through their Super Bowl run, and you're getting that team later on in the season. You are getting the Niners with one late game to me at the end of the season. And part of the reason I like the Rams game at the end, I think unlike some of the other folks out there, is the fact that this isn't a team that I'd say is old, but it's got very important players that are old at very important positions. And it's a Stafford or it's a Devontae Adams or even a Poona Ford, Brendan. Poona Ford was the building block that helping them turn around some of their run defense woes last year from the prior year where it was a sieve. He goes out, they don't have another answer behind him. And they've got to expect him now as a guy that's been in this league now quite a long time to have to roll out there again another year and take up all those snaps. A guy that was injured last year at given points, that some of that age is maybe perhaps showing. So I kind of like, when I look at this roster, some of the fact you're going to play, yes, some of these tough teams, but some of these teams that I can see being kind of diminished by the time you get to that side. And this is obviously heavily, who knows, right? Like you mentioned earlier, this is something you just never know where it goes. But I think you can reasonably say, like we said last year on this with the Niners, where you said, man, week one's tough playing them because they're at the full strength. The exact point I'm making about the Rams and the Niners this upcoming year is the exact same thing I said last year about that game one. Like, man, this is a hellacious game because you're getting them at this old team at full strength. And then you got to find also, though, the flip side of that to the Niners at the end of the year last year where you said, yeah, but when you get to the end of the year, it's going to be on the flip side of that. And you're going to get all the bennies of playing this old team at the end of the season. So it's also one that, yeah, it is like a prediction, but it's also one that, looking at NFL history, Brendan, I think it's pretty strong prediction that when you've got some age on your roster, that thing's going to show up usually near the end of the season in some way or another.
Right. And even that second Niners game, week 12, that's late November. What are the Niners going to be at that point?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Like I think Kittle's probably making a big mistake by trying to come back so early. What is he going to be in week 12? Bosa, kind of the same thing. He's not old, but he gets hurt a lot. Even Brock Purdy gets hurt a lot. So what are they going to be in week 12? They could be unrecognizable very easily. And obviously that goes for any team, but there are definitely players that you earmark as being a bigger injury risk than others, right? Like if you're looking at the Seahawks, you might assume that like Devin Witherspoon's an injury risk because he gets hurt and misses at least a little bit of time every year. Maybe Julian Love because he missed so much time last year. But then somebody like Leonard Williams, no, he hasn't gotten hurt since he got here. He's missed like one game, and over his career, he hasn't missed a lot of time. So you have different levels for different players.
Yeah. And it's also like how you set up by the usage of him, right? Because like Leonard Williams, you go, part of the reason that you've kept him healthy is because of your commitment to the snap rotations. Part of the stuff that the Niners do at times is kind of wear guys out, especially offensively speaking. It's Christian McCaffrey with 400 touches. And this is how you manage guys and the load balance that you put upon them that can help allow them more longer sustainability, especially through the course of a long NFL season, and why depth is so important. And these teams, it's not just that you lose those frontline guys, Brendan. A Devontae Adams goes here and a Poona Ford goes there. Where's the replacements? The point of it being is that these two teams also are kind of missing some of the depth as you get later into the year, to me, where you're going to be able to have these be fitting more in your favor. It's like you can lose Leonard Williams. You've got Jaron Reed, Byron Murphy, Riley Mills behind them to flip right back in there. Now, is it going to be as strong as it is with Leonard? No. But it's that you've got depth to be able to handle those losses. Where they lose a Kittle, they lose a McCaffrey. What's the replacement there? What's the answer that's not going to be a complete like 4-peg drop in performance of what you were getting when you had them out on the field at their strongest?
Yeah, they are betting a lot on long odds this year, and I think they would even admit that. So it will not be a surprise. I don't think anybody will be surprised if the Niners do have that bottom out year just because they're betting so much on older injury prone players.
One of the places I was absolutely kind of blown away by, Brendan, and looking at this was the mileage that was actually going to be flown this year. Is we look at this every year and kind of shake our head and go, dang, it sucks. It is what it is. You're in Seattle. You can't get around the flight angle of this. But then to your side on the Niners, as you just spoke, tell me about the combination of one of the oldest rosters in the NFL having to fly almost 40,000 miles, almost double the amount of miles you flew this year at 22,000 miles. And that just feels like something that can really compound that in addition, doesn't it?
Yeah. That's, although a lot of that's because of the Australia game, right? I mean, that's obviously kind of establishing the benchmark here, but yeah. What else do they? Yeah. Oh wait, do they play in Australia and Mexico City this year?
I think they do. Yeah,
Wow.
they got to do both, I believe.
Yeah. See, I don't like the international games. I do not like the international games. I'm really
I don't either.
I don't this year.
I hate them, Brendan. But they got to go to New York. They got to go to Dallas. They got to go to Atlanta, Kansas City. So there's some flights in other places on there too, but it is just like, that's going to have an effect to me, when you got to fly that much. And even early in the year like that, in a division like this, that's going to be close. It's these things that can be sometimes the difference. And the fact that we get to be so low when we've been up around 33, 34, 35 every year, it's about where we tend to stand as far as our flight. And you got down to 22 this year also should be very nice for us and potentially very helpful along the track on that.
Yeah. Don't get used to that, because probably next year we're going to be back to like,
it's coming. Second. Well, we're getting the international game next year too. You know that. Like, we got out of it this year. It's like London's coming next year, or we're going to Australia next year. It's happening. So we got to make our peace with that. But we got out of it this year, which is good. Just one of the nice little parts to the schedule. Also, a few 10 a.m. games, Brendan. I know that we've conquered this, and this has been less of a problem in recent years, but encouraging to see that you didn't have as many 10 a.m. games, and that really as much, in my opinion, because of the freaking all the primetime games, man. Wiped off some of those 10 a.m.ers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and how many of these games, other than the home games, because obviously the home games, we know there's always a chance, but it doesn't happen very often. How many of these games are going to be impacted by inclement weather? Like, you've got the Commanders, but that's early. That's late September, so probably not. It's probably not going to be anything too extreme. And then, like I guess Denver, but we already kind of know what the conditions are going to be for that game, because it's in Denver and it's October. I don't think it's going to be anything extreme. It's not going to be snowing. I don't think we're going to get a snow game in October. And then you got to go all the way to the Eagles game and Panthers games. Like, those are the end of season games where weather could actually play a factor. Other than that, it's pretty tame.
Yeah, no, it is. I think there's a little hope there. Maybe the Bear game, and get a little wet weather there, cut down on some of the scrambling from Caleb Williams right about that spot. But that is also right about the end of where, for the first 3 weeks of October in the Pacific Northwest, it'll still usually stay a little bit with some of that little drippings of summer left, and then it gets it gets going full bore. So Cowboys could be in there on that as well into early December, as far as a possibility. And I think you mentioned the Rams playing the Giants. The thing I do like about that is that Rams may have to play the Giants when they're as strong as they're going to be for the year. By the time we're playing them here, do you think Jackson Dart lasts by this week of the season? Cam Scatterbo lasts by this week of the season? You got a guy in Neighbors coming off the knee injury and I think there's a lot of questions about whether or not what's he going to give them this year, really, with all the surgeries he's had and just had a cleanup just done, recently. Kind of, I think, nicer for us to be able to face them long. Not that they're going to be a dangerous team, and that probably both the Rams and the Hawks beat them both, but we may not be facing Dart at all and some backup quarterback instead by that point.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good point. Although, is Neighbors expected to be back early, or is he going to be rehabbing in September?
It hasn't changed his prognosis as far as he's due to come back. It was just a cleanup, so they didn't find anything bad in there as far as like the Jermod McCoy. We got to pull out the plug thing. It's nothing like that, but it is that they had to clean it up, and it was a full meal deal. Like, I think it was not just the ACL, but they had to do some little meniscus, a little bit LCL, one of those things, where it's a combo deal, combo platter. So he probably will be back, but is he running full strength, or is he, what he was for a guy that's been rehabbing all offseason? Probably not. And that's one of those kind of breaths you get in the schedule, which was the other thing I like about this is that, though you have that back end schedule, Brendan, where there's this collection of really tough teams we have to play to finish it off, including the Rams in 2 of 3 weeks. I thought the NFL did allow us a nice setup spot for that. And what I mean by that is the Cardinal Raider to the bye, Cardinal Raider bye, where you could see that the team at that point can have potentially players that have played through a good part of the season. Guy here's beat up, guy there's beat up, a couple guys all in the roster a little older in Williams or in Lawrence, who maybe you can now be able to afford to rest a little bit there and set the stage up for those final games to have those guys really fresh. Because you go through the Cardinals, you go, do we need this guy to win this game? Do we need that guy to absolutely win this game if it's on the line? To be them being, yeah, they could play, but it'd be better for them to have the rest. I think you're able to make those decisions in that moment tactically to better set that stage up for them to have that success on the finish.
Yeah, that makes sense a lot. And getting that bye week right before the road game against the Niners is really nice too. That could be the game that kind of buries the Niners at least beneath you. Because if you take care of business in your home game and then you can beat them on the road, it's very hard to imagine that they're going to be a serious threat to dethrone you for the division later in the year. That's it's hard to get swept and still win the division. It happens, but it's tough.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, no, agreed totally on that. We got to go a couple donations here. Let me get the Warhammer guy. Thank you for the $2 dono. We have a big rest differential advantage over the NFC West.
I've seen this chart. Yes. Our rest advantage was like 8th best in the league or something.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, I think it's 8th out of I can't find it right now, but I did see it earlier today. So 8th out of 32 is pretty good. And that is something that I think people lose track of a little bit as I think I found the chart. Yeah, so number 1 is Chicago. And let's see, we are 7th actually. We are a +8. We are +8. The Chargers are -24, so they're kind of getting it they're getting it nasty. Rams are -6. And the 49ers are completely neutral. Neutral. Flat 0. Cardinals are +1 and the Seahawks are +8. Okay.
Interesting.
So I can dig it.
It's where you look at every part of their schedule, from the 10 a.m.s to how the games were set up to where they put the bye in week 11. It's not there wasn't some tough opponents, but the NFL did us pretty solidly as far as like not helping us, but like not hindering us, not putting some, horrible kryptonite spots in the middle of the schedule in varying places. They really kind of allowed this to be just kind of nice and evenly distributed for the most part. A couple moments in there for you to catch your breath, but you're never really spinning. There is the one thing some people are pointing to on this, Brendan, which is the, of course, this one with the Seahawks 3 consecutive weeks with short rest in December, week 14, 15, and 16. And that could be a little bit of a factor here, Brendan, but I don't think it'll be, a major one when it comes down to it on that one. It's one day.
The other thing is we get 1 day of rest extra compared to the Rams before that game, because the Rams are playing on Sunday. We play Saturday. So we can't really complain about it when we're still getting it better than the other team.
And like you just said, we have the negative on the rest differential, which is where you want to be collectively for the season. So again, we come back to we were done really solidly overall with it. And it's not that these things sway the whole thing here. It's just that it's these little things that add up to being the difference when you have things so even across the board between these teams in this way. That's why I think it's worth mentioning this stuff, because you just kind of throw one more up on the pile, Brendan. Okay, throw one more of those little bit up on top of the pile on top of that. And that's how you eventually stack up to, making that the way you're able to edge them out in so many ways. See if it plays out that way. But I like these little advantages we're getting within the schedule in this fashion. AA Joss, thank you for the $5 donation, AA Joss. He says, you had us losing to the Broncos. Go check out their first 5 games leading up to it. It is a gauntlet. So
I have seen this. The Broncos schedule is brutal at the front, easy in the middle, and then brutal at the back. It is tough. But the thing is, I think this actually makes the argument even stronger, because there's a pretty decent chance, and I don't want to get ahead of myself here. There's a decent chance Seattle goes into that game 5-0, and Denver might be something like 3-2 or 2-3. That makes them hungrier. That makes them more desperate. And that is a factor here. Like no matter how much we try to say it isn't a factor, it is. If they come into that game feeling like we need to win this game, so we set ourselves up well for later in the season, and Seattle's like, we're 5-0, we're feeling pretty damn good. This is an AFC game on the road on a short week. We're not going to stress too much about it. I think that actually kind of helps make the argument a little bit.
Yeah, I think that this is a good point. I think as well, it's kind of works on the flip side of this as well to your 5-0 to Seattle if you're walking in that fashion as well, because it not just from the standpoint of like you're letting up and you're easing up, but from the standpoint, Brendan, of that you go, we have a couple of those players that are on this line. We really don't want to play them on a short week. Do we need this game? Do we need this game right now? Like, is it absolutely necessary, or is it just better served to kind of give them this little rest here, and then we come back about 4 weeks later and we got the Raiders Cardinals bye thing that we can kind of then we can really manage some stuff here. And I would argue this is a big part of the modern NFL, Brendan, with the 2 Thursday games and with the 17 game schedule. You know, with the lack of expanding the roster significantly, really, you've got to be able to manage the players in the load and the workload, and that's a big factor into being at your best at the end of the season in the playoffs. So that's part of it for me, Joss, is just the anticipation that we're probably going to, remembering we're coming off that 49er game. So we're going to come off this hellacious rivalry-driven game. The Niners still in relatively fresh shape early on in the year, you know, giving you a battle, physical, and now you got to come back in that short week into the thin air, and it doesn't get talked a lot about, but that thin air is a big deal. Like that is a big advantage for Denver. It's no small part into why they've made the Super Bowl so many times in their organization's history, is because you walk in that stadium and it's really hard to breathe, and you can't just get acclimated in a week. It's not the way it works at that height. You don't go, okay, well, I'm on the low grounds again. No, you're in game, you're huffing and puffing, you can't breathe. And if you're a team that doesn't have guys fresh and that are beaten up already, that's just a few less extra snaps they can run at that point. You're just a little bit weaker playing and play out by that point. And I'm not saying it's a guarantee on this, Josh, but I think to Brendan's point and where I stand, I just kind of think of it from that lens of could be one where you're just almost as much tactically choosing to kind of punt that game because of the way that the schedule's kind of set up for you here.
Yeah. And again, we're not guaranteeing anything. This team is good enough to beat anybody at any point, at any time, for any reason. But looking from where we stand right now, and I feel like it's kind of like the same thing I'm seeing with New England a little bit right now, where people just seem to think those teams aren't any good just because they play in the AFC. You know, these are not bad teams. Denver, I think they're flawed. I'm not a believer in Bo Nix at all, but Jalen Waddle's going to help them a lot. That defense really didn't lose that much from last year, except for Greenlaw, who barely played. And they're well coached. Sean Payton's a great coach. And I don't see any reason why that Denver team shouldn't at least be a very good team this year. Maybe they won't be elite, but I think that people are looking at some of these teams, and I've thrown New England in there as well, and just assuming that they're just going to be bad this year, and I don't totally know why.
Well, I think it's the AFC so flat fell on its face last year that it has people, I think, kind of, you know, with recency bias thinking that that's going to continue to carry over. I would agree with you. I more anticipate that the AFC is going to have a little bit more of a bounce back this year. I still would say the NFC is going to be stronger, but I don't think that it's going to be as weak or as broken down as it sort of seemed last season, which was pretty significant.
Yeah. Like when the news broke about the fact that we're opening the season against New England, everybody said, oh, that's a free win. And I'm like, slow down. Okay, it's Brian Fleury's first game calling plays. And, you know, the Eagles just went through this. Like, I'm sorry to bring up negative examples here, but the Eagles just went through this. I'm sure they thought like they were bringing back so many different pieces from their Super Bowl winning team 2 years ago, and they swapped out the OC for somebody that hadn't called plays before, and the season was kind of a disaster. So we got to see it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a possibility of this. I've got to say, Brendan, I'm not as, and you're not alone on this. There's been others that was raised to me up on the roundtable last week that the Fleury item of this is this big question mark. And my thinking on this kind of goes to, I'm not as concerned or thinking that this is really a viable thing that's going to come into play. And my reasoning on this is this. You're number one, you're not changing offenses. He's moving to a like-for-like offense that you ran exactly last year. Not just an outside zone, but the Shanahan version of outside zone. So that's on his back pocket. He's got his whole offense and much of the backups behind them returning back to this team. he's got almost all of the coaches in their entirety coming back to this team again. You mentioned like the Eagles, they've had some sustained losses and guys getting older and injured a little bit down the line on that offense, especially at times that's contributed to this on that. And let's also not overlook the fact, Brendan, Roseman has spent a PR campaign of an offseason shading his quarterback publicly in the media in various ways in order for him to eventually be able to pivot off Hurts. And what I'm trying to say with this is we got to acknowledge the fact that Hurts has probably limited some of that offense in his approach and maybe some of his deficiencies himself in the way that Darnold won't. You know what I mean? In the way that it's not going to be something you're going to run into where Darnold's coming up and changing a play call at the line of scrimmage because he doesn't like the play, or doing his own thing, which is what we were getting reports with, Roseman doing. And Roseman's doing this because he's trying to talk his owner into eventually moving off Hurts next year. Yeah. That's the whole point of it. So, right. I'm not saying it's not valid to say that this has happened in places, but I think that there's a lot more reason for this to have success here and for him to, and also just the final point being, you run the ball. Like if I got to have an offensive coordinator like Holmgren in 05, who's coming out passing, and he's got to be a step ahead of the defensive coordinator at every step with his play calling because he's passing, and that guy knows he's going to want to come out passing, right? I play Holmgren. I know you're going to want to pass because you pass to set up the run. That's your style. Okay. Now there's chess match. I'm running coverages. You're running pass plays. Chess match. But this is different if I'm coming out and I'm 27th in the league in rushing attempts. I'm coming out to hammer the ball. That Patriot offensive performance was not great, but we still dominated them. Like Fleury can replicate that and have almost nothing as far as the passing attack, just run the ball, and probably going to have some of that similar kind of success there going up against this, Patriot attack in that way. So I'm not writing it down as a win necessarily. I think you're right about that, Brendan, but it just that as well, I'm hearing a little bit of the talk, this Fleury stuff kind of pumping up. And I think that it's not as much of a worry because of those other things.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I expect to win that game. I expect to win almost every game we play this year because the team is that good. But I just think people get a little ahead of themselves sometimes. The New England thing's interesting, right? Because it would not shock me if the Vrabel thing completely derailed them. Like if we come back to this in 6 months and the Patriots are 4-9 and it feels like the team is just falling apart at the seams because of the Vrabel stuff, it's not going to surprise me. But just in general, I'm talking more about teams like Denver and to a certain extent, maybe even a team like the Bears. I've seen some people thinking, the Bears were a fluke last year. I don't think so.
No, I think the Bears were legitimately good to your point. To me, the Bears I wonder about them did they really take a step forward this offseason, or are they taking a step back? I think there's a valid question there with that. And I think they're going to be a good team. I think Johnson did a good job and Caleb did take some steps forward. I think he's still got some stuff he's got to fix. I think he's still doing what I said he was going to be coming out, which is that he's going to be a little bit of a taller Russell Wilson coming out of college and how he's going to play the game, which is great and exciting and fun. And you saw that last year in the playoffs, especially, but it's also one that's hard to be sustainable if you don't have the on-time stuff in your back pocket too. And that's the part he's got to develop. But DJ Moore's gone. They lost their center that was a real big part of their team last year. He retires. Off-ball linebacker Edmonds, they lose in free agency. Brisker is lost. You bring in Bryant, you lose Brisker. And I didn't know they lost Bayard too. He went to the Chiefs. He went to the Patriots.
Yeah, they did.
So it's not as much for me. It's more just kind of like, did you guys kind of suffer ultimately too much collective losses to the gains? Didn't think they had a crazy draft. And to your point on the Patriots, the one thing that they do bring to the play here that's different from the Super Bowl that could be a mitigating factor is AJ Brown trade is going to happen, and then you'd have Romeo Doubs too. So, I mean, like you are getting a couple of guys that are much bigger threats than Stephon Diggs and Kayshon Boutte. That's going to be harder to deal with.
I will say there are some advanced metrics that say that AJ Brown's no good anymore. We'll see if maybe he's motivated after the trade, but there are some advanced metrics that say he just does not get open anymore at all.
Do you get the feeling when you watch him, as I do, like he feels like a guy that's been like, it's almost like his body moves around like a 35-year-old body as far as like he's just scar tissue built up, and he's just kind of like, he's still like, you can see he's still explosive, but it just feels like things have gotten stiff on him almost a little bit in his movement. I just felt like a couple times watching him last year, like it just felt like he's, I don't know how to put it in a way, like just like, like maybe knees are a little bit not as just can't, pick him up and put him down with the kind of ferocity he once did. And he still goes out there and produces, I guess. But yeah, I kind of wonder about that as well. Just in the eye test. I didn't know about the analytics, but just the eye test kind of doesn't look the same.
Right. Yeah, it's that whole separation thing. If you take a look at the separation numbers, he's not separating.
Yeah. And that would fit to what I kind of see, which is maybe a little bit of loss of explosiveness and just not quite that same cat in that way. But Will Campbell's arms haven't grown longer, and they're still rocking him at left tackle, and we still have Derek Hall and DeMarcus Lawrence.
Were they playing Lomu? Are they playing him at right?
Well, they got Moses there, so he's got to crack through. The problem with the Utah tackles, though, and the Utah tackle program in general on this is that they run the ball so effing much that you don't know if you, like with Lomu, and this is kind of important because Patriots kind of want to throw the ball, right? With Drake, they're going to lean back into throwing. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to trust him out the gate into week 1 to be able to start. So it's probably Moses again. And now you have your little taster's choice going on situation again from the Super Bowl where you can stick your long arm power guys over on Campbell's side, and then you can throw whatever twitch you've got over to the other side and hammer that, So that's the part of the matchup where I think you are going to be well suited to be able to attack him again defensively, and that I don't know they're going to have a lot of answers there on that. They're not going to figure out your scheme in an off season. So, but the receivers are going to be better. That's for sure. And to your point on the every game thinking that we should win and have a chance to win. Like we lost our 3 games last year by a collective 9 points. Like that's where this isn't empty. And I choose this at the right time with the $2 donation from Sloby One. Thank you for the 17. Thank you for the $2 donation. It says schedule is weak this year, 17-0. But let's not forget 9 points, and you blew your way through the playoffs with the exception of the Rams. You blew your way through the playoffs on top of that. So, you really did have a dominant team last year, and how they did as the 3rd youngest roster in football. And so every game you're in this, we may make some predictions about wins and losses, but every game you are absolutely going to be in, and that you should be confident that you can go out there and take, even dominate to a certain degree if you're playing your best football. I think if we're playing an A brand of football, I think it's really like only about the Rams and maybe the 49ers, if they're at full health, can stand toe to toe with us. You got to get kind of our lesser version to sort of take us down, I think.
Yeah. And also it kind of helps that when we play the Bears, it's going to be at home and a Monday night game. So, the home crowd's going to have a significant impact on that game. So that gives you a leg up if the Bears end up being an elite team this year. The fact that you're going to be favored to beat them in that game. And, even... I guess you could say maybe a team like the Eagles ends up being better because they swapped out OCs this offseason, obviously, but I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen. Like I'm looking at the rest of the NFC, and to me, for the most part, it's like the up and coming team that could kind of derail the West's stranglehold is probably just the Bears. I don't think it's going to be the Packers, especially with Micah Parsons probably not being that effective this year. I don't think it's going to be them. I don't think it's going to be the Lions. I don't think the Lions can fully recover from what they lost a couple off seasons ago. No. And yeah, I think it's the only team that has a shot is Chicago, and I don't know how great that shot is.
Yeah, you mentioned I kind of like it. I put it to akin to the teams I'd like to avoid. I'm not scared to play them, but just if we can avoid them regular season, let's get them around to the postseason. Fine. Green Bay is a team like that for me. Brendan, Detroit's a team like that for me. Tampa Bay is a team like that for me. Glad that those aren't on our schedule. I think we can play against them and beat them, but just, hey, nice that somebody else has got to deal, like Rams have got to deal with Tampa Bay later on in the year. We'll see how that matchup goes for them because that's a team with a lot of talent. And I think like Reuben Bain's going to be really good for Tampa Bay right out the gate, I think, and could really help out one of the real weaknesses of their defense being that edge rush and giving them something out there, especially if the 2 guys on the inside can actually stay healthy in Vita and Kalijah Kancey. That could be a hell of a defensive line they have out there. But love your confidence, Sloby. Love your confidence, and anything is possible. That'd be a fun season. 17-0 for back-to-back years. My goodness.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness. Green Earth, thank you for the $5 donation on Brendan's side. If you were to go one game this season, assuming all else is equal, which one would you go to? The Bears or the Chiefs?
It's got to be the Bears. The Bears game means more because it's NFC team. I don't know if the Chiefs are even going to be that good this year. Like the Chiefs could end up being another 7-win team this year. They were not good last year when Mahomes was playing, and they've done nothing to really fix the receiver spot that I know of. Like what have they done to get better at receiver?
They've done nothing. They're hoping Rashid Rice is going to not get into trouble and be able to go a whole season, and somehow he's going to be able to carry the load as a number one wide receiver there is pretty much what they're basking on. I don't know. They may make a run at Tyreek Hill at some point as well. But that still is not, I mean, what's Tyreek's leg going to look like after that horrific knee injury last year?
He's done. Don't give me that. He's done.
I can't. I agree. I don't.
Yeah. And they gave Kelsey that ridiculous legacy contract too. It's like, he's been a mess for a couple years now. You don't notice because the numbers are still good, but he's been kind of a disaster on the field.
Well, it's the off script. It's the off script stuff, right? He can juice his numbers up because he's got that weird off script thing that he can do with Mahomes that kind of like gets him sort of those cheater yards that aren't, you're not breaking open on your route on being on time and like creating separation. You're just like, oh, Mahomes does his off script stuff. I know where he's going to move. I'll just go to the spot the field that he knows I'm going to go to. And that's good. You got that, but that's also like not exactly him out there, getting the job done. It's your point of defense, Leo Chanel, Eric Reed, really solid safety you lost. And then your two starting cornerbacks and Chris Jones now, up around 32, 33, something like that. He's got to be up into his, almost mid 30s now. I don't know that they're going to be that good either. And the offensive line, you mentioned the receiving core, which I think is valid. The offensive line too. Once they did the reset again, where they did the Orlando Brown thing and they had Thuney in there and then Creed was in there and the right side was good. And then they had another reset there where they let Orlando go to Cincinnati. Thuney went out in free agency to the Bears, and then Creed's still there. But then it's kind of like, you got the right guard's good. He's really good, but it's kind of Creed and the right guard. And then they're hoping for development from some youngsters at that point.
Yeah. So I would say the Bears. Normally, I would say I'd prefer to go to the game I feel really confident in winning, but also the Chiefs game is kind of low stakes because it's an AFC matchup. The Bears game just means so much more.
Plus, you got to come down there Monday into Seattle if you're going down to check out the game for the Bears. It's get down there and just get in. Going in and out of the bars, people be down there early, and having fun. So it also could be just more a little livelier at that point on a Monday night. Monday night games are down there, have a little bit of a little special kind of energy to them when you go down and check them out. I'm with Brendan though. Bears as well, Green Earth. Peter Go Hawks, thank you for the $5 donation. Peter says, sup, BMB? We're going 15-2, baby. Bears are the only maybe L, and I think we might be resting week 18. Sorry. But not Hawkins, sorry. Go effing Hawks. Let's go, Peter. Well, thank you for the donation. I love your prediction. 15-2, and he says we're resting up in that final Ram game. It don't even matter. They're out of it. They don't got that chance at that point. They're done.
What if both teams are resting and it's Ty Simpson versus Jalen Milroe? Like that could be fun, right? That's good.
The Alabama Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm taking Jalen, I'll tell you that.
Well, yeah, he's the guy with a little bit of NFL experience. He's the guy who's in his second year. And Ty Simpson, he played one season at Alabama. At least Jalen Milroe played like two.
Yeah, two full. And Ty was injured through the back half. We'd just be running RPO the whole game, though. That's all we did. Like no more outside, just RPO. But yeah, I love it. I love Peter, the confidence. It's well-earned confidence. This team is going to be good. And I do maintain as well, Brendan, we haven't, I think, talked about it a lot, but I was going to ask you this question. This is not in regards to the schedule, but one that I've been sort of asking people in general terms of, what do you want to see done with the $28 million?
You mean the cap space that we have?
Yeah. Well, not even just 22. Let's just say this. It's not even $28 million. It's also, to me, it's the double up. It's the cap space and then the lever. The lever being that I have no dead money. I could take a contract on the books right now, base to bonus it, save another $10 million, and I have about as much cap space as anybody in the NFL if I wanted to. And I really am not stressing myself much because there are teams with literally $111 million of dead money right now. We're on $500,000. So it's kind of the two things for me, Brendan, that I sort of look at this and go, and maybe you don't want to do anything. So I'm not trying to tell you got to do something, but what would you do, your general manager, with that $28 million here as we kind of move into the season?
I mean, if you get to around the trade deadline and the season's going really well, I think you're obligated to do something to make sure that you're maximizing your opportunity. Like, imagine how gross it would feel if you have this great season, but then you fall a little bit short and you didn't do anything at the trade deadline. And you're like, man, that was a real missed opportunity there. So probably some of that money is going to go into the Witherspoon extension, right? I still think Witherspoon gets extended eventually this offseason, maybe during the season, but you've got to save a little bit of money there. Um, I feel like the main consideration would just be trading for an edge rusher, right? That's the position you typically trade for. And what else are you going to trade for? You're not going to trade for a wide receiver at this point. You're not going to trade for an offensive lineman. That kind of stuff typically never happens anyway. Teams don't trade good offensive linemen, except for Dwayne Brown. Dwayne Brown's like the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. You're not going to trade for yeah. Oh yeah. And that was an off-season trade, right? That wasn't a trade deadline trade.
Right. No, you're right.
I would say like maybe if a bunch of corners get hurt, you trade for one, but anybody can get hurt. So if we're going to play that game, we can, follow that one all the way down the trail. So mostly you're just talking about trading for an edge rusher. Like what if the Browns are 0-9 at the deadline or something like that, and you have the Myles Garrett thing at least on the table? I think you got to at least think about it.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I do kind of wonder, Brendan, too, as I look at the Rams and the 49ers with both of them too having the cap space that they have, and with the Rams being so kind of, to me, a little bit silly on not doing anything here through the offseason the way that you would think they would do a little bit more. Like they've done stuff, but they haven't exactly gone overdrive for a team that's, kind of fallen just short the last 3 years. And like you would think, well, you do a little bit more than just sort of fit and to serve. But I do think that the Rams are doing this in part, Brendan, because they have a full intention of getting to that trade deadline and throwing that first round pick into next year's draft to the wind. They've taken Ty Simpson now. They have their quarterback of the future. So now they can kind of do that. And that's where I do wonder if there's a kind of valid question to be asked here. If not that, the price of doing business to go back to get a Super Bowl this year may be to have to flip that first round pick at the deadline because your rivals are willing to do it. And we may be all that close, that everything may be just that tight to where you have to. Is that a bad anticipation, or is there something maybe to that?
I see where that's coming from. I mean, it hinges on a player being worth that first round pick coming available.
Yeah.
Like that's always a tough proposition, right? Like, obviously Myles Garrett, if Max Crosby shakes available, that would be somebody you give up a first round pick for.
TJ Watt.
Yeah, TJ Watt, man, so old.
Maybe it doesn't cost a first round pick.
Exactly. And by the way, one thing that people play with is the idea of trading for the other Steelers edge rushers, Herbig and Highsmith. My thing is those guys are small. Those guys are like pure speed edge rushers. They're like 240.
Well, like people are still caught up on the quick win thing. I was lamenting this through the draft process where people are getting caught up on these guys that are like cash as hell types where I'm just going, I don't think Mike's looking to put that into his defense. I could be wrong. We could come to find that he decides tomorrow to do this, but he just he hasn't shown an intention to do it either with the Ravens or here. So until he starts kind of showing some intention to do it, it's sort of hard to anticipate that he will. Not that these aren't good players, but I think your point is a right one where it's like we have a kind of a type. Mike's got a type, he likes the brunettes, the long legs, you know what I mean? That's just how he rolls.
Yeah. What was I thinking about here? I will say, I'm sure you've heard this. A lot of people say we loved R. Mason Thomas, so maybe we don't know Mike's type as well as we think we do, because R. Mason Thomas is antithetical to what we think of as Mike's type right now, I think.
Totally. And that's where I'm open-minded to this. I'm not saying that there's not a possibility they do this, but when they do it will be the first time they've done it since Mike's been here. And that I think that is notable when you're bringing in guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Dante Fowler, who are the archetype, who are exactly the archetype of what he wants off the edge in his defense. So they may be looking for those quick wins, but they still haven't yet. And we'll see if they will, down the line. But I think TJ Watt's been one that's kind of bandied about. I don't think he'd cost the first round pick at this point with his injury history recently and age. But second round pick, Brendan?
I mean, it's going to be a late second round pick, right? Probably. We assume so. We would only make this trade if we're thinking that it would be. We're not going to be like 3 and 5 and making that trade.
No, I would not think so in the least. So, okay. And that's the benefit of having the trade deadline.
All right. So how about, the Giants, everyone talks about Thibodeau. What if it's Brian Burns?
Can't move the contract.
Really? It's unmovable?
There's like 40 mil on signing bonus for that would have to hit them immediately. They didn't do the, it's signing bonus, optional bonus. So, or bonus later in the contract, and they bonused it on the front end to him. So all the money kind of came up front with him on that one, unfortunately.
Because did you read the John Boyle article, the timeline of the draft day stuff?
I was going to, but everybody was saying that it didn't have any nuggets in it. So I was like, all right, well, I don't want to read a fluff piece.
Okay, well, there was this one part of it where out of nowhere, Boyle points out that Mike was looking at the Giants depth chart of edge rushers and going like, Jesus, oh my God. And it was like a really random thing to put in the article. And people were wondering, well, what is that doing in this article? The Giants pass rushers have nothing to do with what the Seahawks are doing in this draft. Some people have turned that into, well, Mike must covet one of those guys. And obviously everyone's thinking about Thibodeau, but I'm thinking about, Brian Burns, which you just said is impossible. But what if what if Harbaugh doesn't like Abdul Carter that much? Is it too early to think about moving him? And if you could trade for Abdul Carter, like that's something that would get me excited.
Yeah, I would love to see it. And the Giants are facing a weird situation right now where it's like somebody's going to have to be moved on. The Thibodeau thing is one where you're basically giving him away. You're probably going to have to eat a bunch of the contract to give him away. That doesn't really make a lot of sense to them versus, probably, hey, what if he turns it on this year and the production actually comes? He was injured last year. What if it, kind of comes back? He had an 11 sack season 2 years ago. And now we have a guy that at the very least we could franchise tag or, find a value point there for him. Burns, unmovable deal. So he's just off the table because of that. And then, Carter could be a guy who's got some off-ball linebacker experience, can come off the edge. Maybe Mike sees him as kind of a weaponized piece you can use in that way in a couple different fashions. He sure doesn't look like he's picked up a weight this offseason. I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures of him, but my man doesn't look like he's been in a weight room for a while.
It's not perfect, but I do wonder if there's something that could happen there.
I like it though. I like it though, Brendan. It's inventive. I think the thing that you're going to have the hard thing that you're swallow with the Giants is the same thing the Vikings ran into with McCarthy when they were trying to decide between Darnold and McCarthy in that offseason, which is, we love Darnold, but if we have to give up McCarthy here, who we just picked in the top 10, like we're getting significantly less than what we picked this guy at. And like, that's a tough one to have a team make its peace with that type of stuff, because they're just like, man, we're having to eat this dead money on the bonus. Cause there's bonus money with Carter. You got to would be pretty heavy, him being that a high pick. So, but I like it. And I think you're also kind of touching on why you're looking at Carter is that as you look through these teams in the league, there's just not going to be probably a lot of great edge rushers out there that are available. It's going to be probably very thin at the deadline on this.
Yeah, let's say the Chargers aren't very good this year. Would they send Khalil Mack to finally go win his first career playoff game?
Yeah, they would, because it especially saves them probably some money on that for the, what he's going to make this year. If they were down, that's one that could make some sense.
Sign me up for that.
Yeah, no, I'd be in favor of something like that. But I'm looking at these other teams. I mean, that's just, Jaguars are going to Hines, Walker, they're not doing nothing. Texans ain't doing nothing. Colts ain't giving you a lot too, and somebody else, they're not doing anything. You don't want anybody from the Titans. Browns Garrett doesn't seem like he's going to get moved. Bengals don't got nobody anymore. As you go through this, man, it is kind of lean as far as the options go as at the deadline to go and target a player like that. But this also could be just like we're talking edge rusher, Brendan. This could also be a position that we lose to injury. That's a position that's really good right now, like receiver or something that you go, okay, we're going to get Garrett Wilson because we lost Rashid Shaheed or something. I don't think they'll do that, but just something. Yeah, where it could be a position you're just not considering.
What about, here's the other part of it too. Would you rather make this big trade and give up a pick, or would you rather just sign Clowney in October for minimal money and no pick, and then you just have Jadeveon Clowney? I know he's not as good as TJ Watt, but I might rather have him for free than TJ Watt for all that money and the second round pick.
Well, I would say this. I like that option on the table as more of a preferable option to doing the Watt thing. I would say that I'm not meaning this to be towards the edge rush on Watt with this. I'd say that this can be a both situation as far as you both do the Clowney thing and then you end up having to also need to do the first round pick. Because I'm spitballing here, Brendan, but you come out 5-1 and you're at the trade deadline and the Rams are about that record and the 49ers are at that record. And they're out there. Like we've seen at times, the arms race is in full swing and they're making big swings and big trades. Do you feel pushed at that point to then try to go make that big swing to take yourself over the top if I'm in their position, knowing the schedule is going to get hard down the end? and maybe not, again, not necessarily just the edge rush. It can maybe be a different position that becomes available for whatever does become available in the market. This is always hard to anticipate because some of this is also teams that we think are going to be good who end up not being maybe as good as they thought they were going to be. And so guys become available who you didn't think was ever have a chance of becoming available. But I think at the heart of kind of what I try to get to in this long labored point of it is that I just feel like this will be a unique year, Brendan, because of how strong this division is, how aggressive this division's been in the past with trade deadline deals and just aggressiveness in general, but then also kind of what the cost of doing business has been to get a Super Bowl in recent years. Like we had to do with a little bit of the Rashid Shaheed thing. We got kind of the less cost on that one because we only had to give up a fourth and a fifth. But I think that you have to end up making these kind of big moves at the deadline. And that's where I would like to see Seattle being willing to be okay with throwing that first round pick, even in a strong draft, if that's what it's going to take. And if that's what you're watching the rest of your competition do. If Rams go out there and they add on a Garrett Wilson, let's say, right? Where the 49ers go out there and they find a TJ Watt that they pair up with Nick Bosa down the end stretch of the season. You feel a little more impelled, don't you?
Right. You do. But my point was, don't underestimate the impact that a guy like a Clowney could have. I think he could help this defense a lot. And you don't have to give up anything to get him. Like, yeah, TJ Watt's better, but at the same time, how much better is he? Like, I don't think it's as black and white as some people might paint it.
No, I think that's a fair point with it. And again, this could be something that could be a strong safety you find out there that's on the last year of his deal or something. You know, it's like it could be a little bit random here on this. A cornerback that suddenly is out there. That's a lockdown corner that becomes available that you didn't think could be available. That, you know, something like that. I'm just to kind of keep an eye on with this. Tala Assassin with a $2 donation on Brendan's side. Thank you for that. We lost pieces, but hopefully we can get to 11 plus wins. Well, that's I see at least 11 wins on this. I can see us being down at I do have us at 4 losses on the year myself, Brendan, but I think 11's very attainable with the schedule.
Yeah, it's everyone's focused on what we lost, but I think there's like other stuff at play here. You also have what you gained, and I did an article for Seahawks on SI a couple days ago, kind of talking about what we lost and what we replaced it with, and it's not some big blowout in favor of what we lost. It's not at all. Like, it's close.
No,
it's close. And I mean, there were people last year. This is not just sour grapes in hindsight. People last year during the season said they thought Ty Okada was better than Kobe Bryant. And I didn't agree, but it was arguable. It was close.
I would make the argument that he was better than Kobe. I would argue that, like, it's a situation where the coaching staff. Do you think the coaching staff really, for Kobe, who's been the good soldier here with this team throughout his time, right? Comes here as an outside corner, goes to become a slot. Then you transition him for now a second time to a different position in his pro career to safety. He works his butt off to become the player he does at that. And Okada rises up and Okada gets better. And Okada was the 14th highest rated safety in the sport last year by PFF. Kobe Bryant was the 29th highest rated safety by PFF, if I'm not mistaken, something in that territory. So there was a pretty big difference between these two players and what they were bringing to the table as far as that. That's significant as far as difference of grade. And I thought that played out on the field to where there are times with Kobe where he's going to lose a tackle. There are times where he might be just a little bit out of place from where he should be. He's going to be a ball hawk. He's going to take the ball away. He's going to tend to be a good all-around player and a dog. But like, those things are also existing in his game. Part of the reason they didn't pay him the amount of money that the Bears were willing to pay him. But I think you could make an argument here that you made a minor upgrade at the position, Brendan, with what Okada brings. I'm not saying it's some monstrous, huge jump, but it is potentially a little bit better as far as what the data tells us.
Yeah, it could be. And either way, it's 1/12 the cost in terms of average annual value. So, of course, you're going to do that. And then you add Bud Clark into it. And one thing to keep in mind, I'm not saying Bud Clark is going to be better than Kobe Bryant immediately. Bud Clark's a much better athlete. I was looking at the RAS scores. It's not even close. Like, Bud Clark is a better prospect than Kobe ever was. I'm not saying that makes him a better player, but it's not even close. And look, I don't think that Jadarian Price is better than Walker, at least not right now. I don't. I know some people seem to be thinking that. I don't believe that. But then I look at like Dante Fowler versus Boye Mafe, and it's like Fowler's probably better unless he falls off a cliff this year because of age. Fowler's better. And okay, Derek Young is probably better than Emmanuel Henderson Jr., but Derek Young missed half the year last year with an injury anyway. So he didn't even play that much. So who cares about that, really? And that's assuming Emmanuel Henderson even makes the team. He might lose his spot to somebody else. So, and then I'm thinking about all these players on the team that we can reasonably expect will make significant improvements in 2026. And like Sam Darnold, I've talked about this a little bit lately. People are like, "Oh, Sam Darnold was so good last year, he can't get better." He can. He led the league in turnovers last year, even though he barely ever dropped back. He can get better, right?
Yeah.
And we saw that a little bit in the postseason where he played. I don't want to say perfect football, but he cleaned it up significantly. And when Darnold's not turning the ball over, this team is almost unbeatable. Like it's very hard to beat this Seahawks team when Darnold isn't turning it over. Guys like Gray Zabel should be better this year. I mean, he was not that good last year. People forget this. Until late in the season, he didn't turn it on. Anthony Bradford contract year, do not count him out if he does play, just being better because it's a contract season. Nick Emanwari could make big strides this year. That could be a big one. Murphy could still get better. Like don't forget about all those things as well when you're talking about last year's team versus this year's team.
Oh, let's throw on top of it guys that have a lot of talent that could take steps forward in Arroyo and Riley Mills. Horton, if he can stay healthy on the outside, is a vibrant threat there. Rashid Shaheed having an off season to actually work with Darnold and get on the same page. I look at it the same way, Brendan, and I kind of think of it like this. So you broke it down well as far as the losses. And if we want to just be as, and I don't even think I would agree with this as far as this goes, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say, well, okay, you lost negative 2%. Like when you take the Walker to the Jadarian Pryor, you take all of it, right? And you bundle it all together on collectively lost. Okay, so let's say you lost 2%. But wouldn't it be fair to say, to your point on the development factor, on the improvement factor, on the third youngest roster in the NFL getting better just naturally that won the Super Bowl, that 6% improvement across the board in just general terms as far as that youth getting better and the cohesion and all that? Okay, so now you're 4% better as a team. I mean, I look at it in that kind of way, which is what really emboldens my confidence as much as anything else, because this is not a shot in the dark. And I know I mentioned this a lot with the third youngest roster thing, but I just don't think anybody really talks about it as much. You had a team of babies with some vets in there sprinkled in that won the Super Bowl. The babies are not going to get worse. The babies are going to grow into full-ass grown men. And that's going to lead to a better version of play. Now, maybe some of the older guys show some of their age here too with it. We'll see. But part of that also comes down to how you manage them and the rotations and what your reliance is going to be on them versus the rest of your roster. And part of this roster is, as Mike and John have said, about 120 players and building up the strength and the depth. And that's what you've got across the board. That one thing, in my opinion, Brendan, the Niners and the Rams are kind of missing as far as the equivalency. I mean, it's one of the real differentiating factors between us, to me, and them is I don't think they have that as much across the board.
Yeah, and who are those older players that you're worried about leveling off because of age? It's like Leonard Williams, Jaron Reed. Now, I think that Byron Murphy's probably going to get a little better this year. He was only 23 last year. You don't usually cap out as a player when you're 23. And Riley Mills, by the way, too. You could easily have those two guys replace and kind of fill in whatever those guys leave behind. And then you've got DeMarcus Lawrence. I think that's the other obvious one. Other than that, you got
three edges, and maybe Clowney you'll end up adding on top of it to keep him good to go.
Yeah, like who else? JSN's probably going to be worse because he was so good last year. It's impossible to be that good again, but that's not age. That's just kind of like, oh, teams are going to triple team him now because they're terrified of him.
Yeah. No, yeah. I see it the same way. I don't, you've got a couple guys that might, but you've got more than the reinforcements to deal with it if that does happen, and there's no guarantee it's going to happen, especially with how you're set up to allow them to not have to carry too much at their age, like the Niners are going to do with a lot of their guys on the roster, where it's like, Bosa's going to eat up all the snaps. They're not going to come off the ACL being like, let's manage this ACL. They're going to do just like they do with McCaffrey, where it's just like, keep him out there. We need him out there. He's got to be out there. It's like, well, that's what leads down to you getting broken down. That's what ends up leading to those major injuries when you can't really manage that. And the good news is I think that the Seahawks have been one of the best teams in the NFL at managing injuries and looking at them with like a long-term scope and managing player rotations and understanding how important this is as far as to keep the health of the team in the right place. And no coincidence, Brendan, that they've started to kind of turn this around in the last couple of years, as far as especially last year with the health of the team and how they did this. Not that you didn't suffer injuries, but you were able to really not suffer the big major one. You'd lose a guy for a couple of weeks, but you notice there wasn't as many of those, ACLs or out for the years or the backs or the torn hamstrings, Kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to do a quick shout out to the sponsor of both mine and Brendan's show. And that is, of course, if I can find it here. Where's the stupid thing? Where's it? There we go. And the sponsor of our show is the best sports app running the game. That's Prize Picks. Both me, Brendan, running with Prize Picks. And when you use our code, it's the same code. You don't have to use a unique code. You don't have to pick between us, pick between the children. No, just use one code, HMA. And when you use that code, you put a $5 lineup down. They're going to put $50 into your account. Use Prize Picks today. We got basketball playoffs, full swing, baseball going. You could take the overs, the unders. You can get into some fantasy on that. You got the seasonal picks up here right now going on as far as for football goes. Right here, I've got the Jadarian Price going over 725 yards rushing. I think that's an easy one. He's going to get a lot of carries out the gate, a lot of carries throughout the course of the season, and this offensive line is going to open up some holes for him. I also don't think, as we talked about earlier, the Jackson Dart's making through a full season of play here. So to think that he's going to get to 3,225 yards to me is not happening, in my opinion.
I like
it. You like it? I got the Brendan stamp of approval on it.
Yeah,
I love it.
That seems pretty good to me, man.
I love it. So take advantage today. Use our code. Terms and conditions do apply. Please do see their site for details. And do remember to gamble responsibly, but please do show some love here to both of our channels on using that code. And yes, there are some restrictions in the state of Washington, but if you use it on a casino's network in the state of Washington, you can use the app in full. Thank you to Brian's Pick, sponsoring both me and Brendan, a lot of the Hawk community out here this year. And we got a couple more donations here over on this side of it.
Okay.
Cal from South Park, thank you for the $5 donation. I wonder how many teams are going to go for 2 against the Rams. It's clearly still bothering them, and they weren't the same team after Charbonnet. Yeah, it's one where definitely this offseason has been one, Brendan, where I felt like there still have been those remaining echoes. You saw it, how long they held on to trying to do the rule change, and McVay almost felt like he probably got clowned on it at the coaches meeting so hard that he eventually was like, all right, I won't do it. Fine, I won't do it. I just kind of felt he was like a little bit that place of it. More than he came to his peace with it. It was more like he got shamed into like withdrawing it.
I feel like he realized there was no argument to be made. He couldn't actually justify what he was trying to say. He kind of submitted the request, but then he realized he couldn't really defend it without basically just saying, look, I wanted to win that game. Because the only thing I can think of is some kind of rule regarding the fact that it took a while from when the play ended to when the review started. And maybe there should be some kind of time limit. That's the only thing that I could think of. But in terms of I remember Stafford after that game saying that I think the referee should have implemented common sense to say that wasn't a conversion. And you can't do that. You can't tell the referees to utilize common sense. That's you want to take their ability to utilize their common sense out of it as much as possible because you've listed out every possible scenario. They don't get to do that. Clearly.
I agree 100%. I think that the thing that every fan that I ever hear tells me in my chat game day and what I hear through fans when it comes to officiating is that they want the call right. Nobody ever talks about, this is the first instance I've heard people talking about how long it's taken to get the call right. It sucks when it takes too long. I want the game to go fast. I want there to be a speed to it. But you know what the most important thing is? Getting the call right. And if it's a play like that, where it's not exactly easy, we could all look at that replay, Brendan, and it's not necessarily was just, it's clearly easy to see that this is going to be a 2-point conversion. It's there's kind of a lot going on in that play. You got to make sure the ball's going backwards. You got to make sure the guy's gone and grabbed the possession. It takes a second to kind of figure out. It's one of the wilder plays that we've seen almost in NFL history, quite frankly. And so I think that's one where you've got to kind of have a little bit of an understanding of the case and circumstance of what's going on and not just look at it as they just took a long time on that one. They got it right. The thing I don't understand about the Rams bitching and moaning on this is that they're bitching and moaning about a call that they got right. When I bitch and moan about the 2005 Steelers Super Bowl, it's because the fix was in and I can go back and replay 10 cut-ups from that game that are egregious ass calls that should never have been made in a Super Bowl. Those are bad calls. They were bad calls then. They're bad calls now. Right? You guys are going after a call that was the correct call. And that's the part that I think to South Park, to Kyle's point on this, that's the part where I do kind of wonder about this sort of lingering in their head, Brendan. I kind of wonder about it with the moves they've made this offseason. Have the moves they made this offseason rung to you of drive, push hard, do everything you can? Man, we're going up against this tough team and we've got to try to use every advantage we can to take advantage. Or has it been, man, that was fluky. We'll just grab a corner and, we run it back again. We play that team 100 times. We beat them 93 times. I feel like there's a bit of that feeling from them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, the weird thing is, like, even if you do think that game was a fluke, the NFC Championship game, we led for about 58 minutes and 30 seconds of that game, I think. They had the lead, or it was tied. It was 0-0. But other than that one very short segment at the end of the second quarter, we were ahead that whole game. So, and by the way, I see another super chat talking about this, so I won't get into this now. But did they fix their special teams? Did they? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know what the Rams did with their special teams, but that kind of looms large to me, because that's really that's really what cost them.
Oh, it is. And it cost them in multiple different ways. That's the thing with it too. It cost them in games before they played us. It cost them then in the game. I mean, obviously the Rashid Shaheed is the big one that everybody goes to a little bit, but then Brendan, it's also the missed field goal in that game, right? Like, you missed a field goal in that game too as well. And then you got the draw punt. Do you have a guy back there right now that's going to receive those punts and be sure-handed, and more sure-handed now than what you had in that conference championship game? I don't see who you've added on your roster who does that. You're going to throw the rookie 6th round pick out there? Is that the answer?
Yeah. What, CJ Daniels? Is that his name?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't know. Who else are they going to have go back there and do it?
Kyron
They
Williams.
do not have a guy on the roster right now.
It's going to be Kyron Williams probably. And he's just going to fair catch everything.
Yeah. Even I'm just looking at right now, CJ Daniels. If Daniels doesn't even have a history of doing it, Brendan.
Right.
I mean, this is a problem. They're going to run Xavier Smith, the guy that dropped that punt, is going to be probably their punt returner game one again this season to begin things. And this is, to me, again, they're not learning lessons. They're making excuses. They're passing it off to fluke and to happenstance and to an official who took too long to make the call that was the right call, instead of going like, why did we actually lose that game? Why did we not fall? Why did we really fall short? And I know, to your answer, they've not addressed the special teams unit. It's not gotten in. They're just kind of hoping that it's just going to be like, just don't mess it up this year, guys. Okay. You don't have to do good things. Just don't mess it up. Versus us and how we look at our special teams unit and say, hey, be a key factor to our success. Be a driving force.
I mean, there's a lot of stubbornness in this football decision-making stuff with a lot of these football guys. Like, we talk about with Shanahan. He refuses to not overload his players during the regular season, and he pays for it every year, but he won't stop doing it because he thinks it's the right thing to do, and he's not going to let anything like evidence actually change his mind. And maybe we're seeing a little bit of that here with McVay. He's like, I don't need to fix my special teams. They don't matter.
Well, I agree. I think that there's two places McVay has holes, and I don't think he's got a lot of holes as a head coach. I think he's one of the best in the National Football League, no doubt about it. But I think there are two places in his game right now that there are some holes. And the one of them is his addressment to the special teams. Just firing the last guy that they did there who was so good for them. You know his name, I think.
What, the special teams guy?
It was back a couple years ago. The guy that was a problem for us when he was with the Rams, because he inherited him there with the Rams.
Hold on,
he was the son of a former head coach.
It's not Fossil, is it?
Fossil, yeah.
Yeah, the son of Jim Fossil?
Yeah. So there was a whole thing where he fired Fossil after Fossil had done pretty good for him early on. Fossil had done like a fake call or something, and it pissed McVay off, and he's like, you're out. And he kind of, it's been the redheaded stepchild of the team ever since in a lot of ways. But that remains the one thing to me McVay's not corrected or fixed even in this offseason. And the other thing is that they set themselves up as a team that wants to run the ball, right? You drafted another tight end in this draft in the second round. You've spent the money on Kyron Williams. You've got all of what you put in the offensive line there. Yet game in and game out, you see always a predilection by him to draw back into Stafford throwing the football. Even in games where they're not necessarily down by points, but just that he gets frustrated with the offense. It's like the second Rams game last year, Brendan, where first half he's running the ball, right? It's all dirty and he's just trying to like, and then you could just see him get frustrated with that because he wasn't getting enough points from it, even though it was kind of working. They were controlling the ball, controlling time of possession. And then he comes back to the second half and he has Stafford start throwing the ball around. And look, Stafford threw well that game and made some headway at that point, but that's just always the way he kind of turns towards he can't fit to what he wants to do in his designs in the offseason, Brendan. Like they set up the offseason, we want to run the ball, we're being 12 and 13 personnel, we're really run, and then comes back to throwing the ball a bunch with Stafford.
Yeah, very true, very true. There's, I mean, and this goes for pretty much every coach out there. I'm sure McDonald is stubborn about some things as well.
Like, just to illustrate this point, Brendan, we talk about Pat Stafford in Detroit, right? At the height of like, you're not running the ball, you're throwing the ball all the time, right? You're racking up the stats. You have a 2011 season where you throw for 5,000 yards and 41 touchdowns on the back of this high attempt approach, right? So 663 attempts in that season that he put up those numbers in 2011. Last year, almost 600 attempts. Mm-hmm. To kind of just to my point, as far as like that leading thing that the Rams do, where they always fall back into trying to have his arm get it done versus staying committed to the run and leaning into that.
Yeah, it is kind of weird when you think about it because they were playing from ahead most games last year, right?
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, exactly. Where you can't say, well, we had to play from behind, so we had to throw the ball. It's that, no, you're throwing the ball as your frontline strategy to winning football games. And when you're doing that with a guy that's, 40s, getting into 40s of, getting up there in age like he is on that, that's the whole purpose and reason that you went to the run heavy nature 2 years ago, the 1,000 pounds of beef up front, getting Kyron Williams and then rewarding him with a contract. The whole point of that was to then limit down the attempts with Stafford so that you could mitigate some of the injury stuff that that's there with his back. Because if you have him throw 40 times a game, he's taking more hits, probably going to get injured at some point or another. And so they did this math, but then they've kind of turned back off of it last year because he was so effective. This is the part of having a superhero quarterback is you want to use him, right? Take the suit off, get the cape out. Let's go, bud. You don't want to put him in the back in the garage and like it's probably hard, but that's kind of also worth McVay where I think he can't help himself, Brendan. And it very well could get him bit on the butt again this year.
And remember, Stafford did get hurt last year. He just was able to play through it. Like he got hurt against the Panthers. Something happened with the finger and he was not good in that game or the Bears game.
Yeah. That's the thing with this is you get to that certain attempt place of things and that this is going to be an inevitability. And you don't want a quarterback to be at 40 years old, dropping back 600 times, throwing the football. To me, that's not the best way to be kind of being careful with him, especially if you want to get in the deep in the playoffs. But we'll see what they do this year. Maybe he learns his lesson finally this year. But they have it with the special teams. And this is to Coop's question. Thank you for the $5 donation, Coop. It says, what has the rest of the division done to catch up to our special teams?
Yeah, I will say the 49ers special teams last year was very good. So they didn't necessarily need to do anything new. But yeah, the Rams, and this is another thing with the Rams. Remember, their special teams almost blew the Panthers playoff game and the Bears playoff game because the Panthers, they had a punt get blocked that allowed the Panthers to score what was almost the game-winning touchdown. And then the Bears, when they punted with like a minute left in the fourth quarter, that punt, like, it was like a terrible punt. It flew out of bounds after like 15 yards or something, and it gave the Bears the opportunity to go tie the game. So this was not just like one fumbled punt return in the NFC Championship game. This was something that had been happening in every playoff game.
Yeah, no, it showed up a variety of different times. And it's a good point about the Niners. I will say with the Niners that Sky Moore was a big part of the return game for them that allowed them to look good. And he's no longer there this year.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, he's not with them anymore, but they did get things kind of solidified there with Eddie Pinheiro. He's been a fairly solid kicker throughout his career. That should be pretty sustainable for them into the future with him there. But nobody's taken any steps forward, and maybe a little bit of a step back for the Niners with that going from Sky Moore to Guerrero, because Moore never developed as a receiver, Brendan, but he was always a pretty good kick returner, even back with the Chiefs. Remember, the whole reason the Niners traded for him last year was he had the kick return touchdown against us in preseason.
Yeah, I remember that.
So like this is a little bit of a different from them on that side of it, and what they were running out there. Jacob Cowling is slated to be their punt returner with Parasol backing him up. That doesn't, scare me that much on that side of it, but we're still significantly better, and we're still the best special teams unit in football. And it's as much because of investment, because we worked to make it that, not because you just happen to have a great kicker and a great punter,
Yeah. Yeah. Or you spend a third round pick on a kicker like the Niners did.
That's right. Only to end up with Eddie Pinheiro.
Yeah. And I don't know what the Cardinals are doing on special teams, and I don't care. It doesn't matter. Like I can't even speculate on that. Sorry. No, I don't care. I don't care.
I don't either. They're slated to go 4 wins this year. They've leaned into the tank. Good for them. They'll be a problem into the year, especially if they get their quarterback next year's draft. We'll talk about them then, like at that point we'll get our concerns then. But they're smart. I'm glad that they've done this for a Cardinal fan perspective, Brendan, that they're leaning into it bit this year in this way with this quarterback class coming up. I think that's smart of them to do so. And they're gonna have a lot of money to spend next year.
Yeah, and it's like the LeBron clip. Have you seen the LeBron clip that's been all over the internet where he's like, hey, anybody else in your roster can talk to me like that, not you. That's where we are with the Cardinals right now.
You don't say that. Not you. You don't get to say that. Don't you ever say that. Coop, thank you for another $5, man. Appreciate the support. Can't wait for some more quote unquote flukes to win us another Super Bowl. Then Rams will realize they blew their window because they overlooked us. Indeed, they realized their mistake too late, Brendan, which is what I'm hoping for. This is what I've said. I've been telling Ram fans this when they think they're like, I get Rams fans come in my chat and they think they're like showing me something like, you go, where were your dad? It was really a fluke last year. We were the true champ. Like, I love hearing you guys say this. You think you're triggering me, but I actually love hearing this. And I hope it just drains through the whole organization, the coaching staff and the players. I hope that just permeates everything, this mentality and thought, because that's not the mentality of a champion. That's not how a champion thinks. They think about what we can control. It's like our whole thing. Like, we do not care. It's about us. It's like, that's what a champion does. He doesn't worry about this outside fluky stuff. He's like, no, we didn't get the job done. How do we now get the job done in the future? So I hope they keep that energy, Coop. I hope it's throughout the whole organization. I kind of think it's not necessarily center stage, Brendan, but I think there's something to this with the organization. I'm not saying it's like the downfall here will come from the 2-point conversion, but I do think that there's a little bit of like, this rock is still kind of stuck in their shoe a bit. Do you feel like that as well? Or am I maybe just overstating this?
I think there's something going on there with that. I think the bigger factor would be just the fact that it seems like Snead and McVay are not on the same page. And I know that they're trying to spin that, but nobody's going to be able to convince me that those two guys are on the same page right now. Like, they can say whatever they want to say. It doesn't matter to me. They're clearly not thinking about the same things right now. There's no way McVay likes that Ty Simpson pick.
No, I don't. And you are seeing the spin, right? Like, somebody was like Brenton, and like somebody came out and was like, I know they were angry about something. McVay was mad. Because at first it was like, no, McVay's not mad. He's just trying to not hurt Stafford's feelings. That was the first thing we heard. And then we heard, no, he was mad, but it was nothing to do with the Ty Simpson thing. It was about a whole nother thing having to do with the Rams. And you're like, okay, well, which is it? Or maybe he's actually kind of pissed about the Simpson thing and he knows how stupid it is, this pick in this moment too. Maybe that as well.
Yeah. And why wouldn't you be mad? Like, if you're McVay, I talk about this all the time. We know how high a standard he has for his quarterbacks. The guy ran Jared Goff out of town, who is a decent quarterback. Jared Goff can play. Jared Goff's a good quarterback, but he wasn't good enough. So we know that Sean McVay pounded the table until they got rid of him because he couldn't stand him, because he wanted a better quarterback. So now you're drafting this 1-year starter from Alabama with not much of an arm and mediocre mobility and probably not probably, definitely a worse prospect than Jared Goff ever was, and certainly a worse prospect than Stafford was. How can you be happy about that?
Yeah, I agree. It completely adds up as to why McVay would be, knowing as well that they don't have any other extra money to spend here. Like, you got to sign your extensions. You got to get Puka done. You got to get Kobe done. You got to get Avila done, Byron Young. Like, these deals got to be figured out, so you don't have the cap space to use. This is where you can make your headway as far as helping your team out. A Mekhi Lemon, for instance, and reinforcing the receiving core. So I agree. I don't think that there was any way that this was a McVay pick or that he was happy with it. I think that it's also, he wasn't the one who's good besties with like Ty Simpson's dad or Ty Simpson's dad. That's the part of this that also that I think is kind of my little like fly in the ointment here, is the relationship between Les Snead and Ty Simpson's father. Because you can just see how those conversations go on the back porch, on a summer, like, it's just work, dad working his ear, no bigger supporter in the world. He's going to be the best. I'm telling you, you guys are going to love this pick. You pick him, you'll never be more happy. Hardest worker you've ever seen in your life. He's a leader of men. Like that, just filling Snead's ear up. This wasn't a pick where what I'm saying is he didn't make this pick of like sight unseen. We did our due diligence. Like, I don't want my general manager to ever have any relationship with the quarterback he's picking's father going into it. That can develop after you select him, but I don't want that coloring the waters prior. Would you?
Right. It's I mean, it's just inviting bad things that can happen, like much smaller scale. And most people won't remember this, but 2006, I think it was, the Seahawks drafted a fullback named David Kirkman. I believe his name was David Kurtman or David Kirkman. And the pick made no sense. And later we found out that his family was friends with Holmgren's family. I don't even think he made the team. I don't think he ever made the team. So I believe that people did some research into it and figured out, oh, okay, that's why. Okay. And
yeah,
I mean, that was a lower pick. It wasn't a big deal, but it was still stupid. So
yeah,
this is pretty stupid too.
Yeah, I think it's gonna bite them on the butt, man. And they are overlooking us, Coop, but that's a good thing for us. Let them keep overlooking us. We benefited last year off the back of it. We'll do so again this year, and just keep stacking Super Bowls and let them just keep talking about flukes and luck and all that other stuff. And they'll never learn their lessons, as I say, Coop. As long as they're caught up on luck and fluke, you're never learning why it is you fail. Feel like Yoda, You do not know why. You do not know why you failed.
Mm-hmm.
Feed me. Thank you for the $5 donation. Appreciate you for that. It says the Rams passing the football instead of running the ball when up 35-13 is the reason they failed. And 49ers neglecting the O-line is the reason they fail. Fully agree with you here, man. I mean, he's talking about 35-13 would be the second Rams game that the Seahawks played, where you got the 4 straight stops into the second half. And the Rams, indeed, into that second half, in my opinion, Brendan, just caught up into this place of like, the running's not working good enough. I don't like it enough. Because you remember, it wasn't that it wasn't working, Brendan, that first half. Remember, they ran the ball. They had the stupid play where their lineman ran into the end zone, and that took a touchdown off the board, which made a couple field goals.
That was the first quarter, right?
Yeah, that was the first quarter. So but the whole first half, he really stayed committed to McVay versus the first game, even Brendan, where he was just like, I'm going to just run. Because the first game, he did a lot of play action, and then we just attacked Stafford off the play action boots. We just had a defender free rusher that would just be right there in his face off the play action when he turned around. Second game, early in the first 2 quarters, he went running heavy, and he was doing the whole 3 yards, 4 yards in a cloud of dust, right? Because we were doing our nickel thing, and he was coming out with 12 and 13 personnel. But then the whole second half started getting some success in passing in the third quarter, and then just kept his foot on the gas, even when he had the lead, to feed me's point, to where then you should be probably running here and starting to try to. It's like how Mike does, right? Where you see him tactically, even late third quarter, have his offense like we did last year with Kubiak, to where you're starting to already kind of like play that. We're going to start motoring this clock down. We're going to start leaning on this clock thing. And McVay won't kind of operate like that. He's still just like, let it sort of rip, just continue to be aggressive. There's not that sense of like, you're not being like conservative, or you're not trying to like play not to lose, but you're just being aware of the fact that like, if I shrink this time down, there's only so many possessions in this game. If I can manage to eat this clock for the next 2 possessions, an extra 5-6 minutes, 1 less possession for you, with us up on the game as we are on this, you just can't come back. So there's a little bit of that math you can do as a coach, but I don't know that McVay does that math as much, because he just ends up kind of falling into this mode.
Like, what's the lesson that McVay takes from that last game, the NFC Championship game, where, I saw some people say that one of the things that really hurt them was their final drive, where they got down to the 6 and then didn't get the touchdown, is that drive took too long. They had the ball for like 10 minutes and still didn't score. And I saw some people saying like, that teaches you, if you're going to fail fast. You don't want a drive that takes the whole fourth quarter and then you still don't score. Now you have no time to get the ball back and go win. And I wonder if he's maybe thinking like, man, I should have passed it more, because then if we had failed, we would have failed faster. We would have punted it. I could have gotten the ball back with plenty of time left. I wonder if he's like thinking about it like that. And maybe that's not the right mentality to have, but I wonder if that's how he thinks about this kind of stuff.
It certainly is possible. I think that part of the reason that they took the time up the field has to do with a lot of what Seattle challenges you to do, which is that they're the second best team in the National Football League last year at limiting big explosive plays.
Right.
So like they played a heavy amount of safety over the top. So, do you ask Stafford to throw into the safety of the coverage, or do attack where the coverage is going to be more vulnerable? And that's kind of what Stafford did on that drive. I think I would make the argument that we come back to, I think you're not wrong that maybe McVay's thinking about it in that way. So first off, I'd say that. I think that he thought about it as that his defense let him down, because part of that has to do with too, Brendan, of, okay, I fail fast, but can I trust my defense to stop the Seahawks offense right now? With Sam Darnold on his way to like 350 yards passing, Do I feel good about that? No. They went back and they traded for one corner and they signed another corner. That obviously shows they think a lot of the problem was corner based. But if you take that final drive down to that moment there, Brendan, and you look at those plays and the sequencing of plays, and you've got the fortuitous bust, and then you got Devin Witherspoon breaking up 2 plays down there at the goal line in that sequence, right? They're inside the 10-yard line, right? Where's the runs? The exact thing I'm talking about. Where's the runs? You have the 1,000 pounds of beef. You got us living in nickel. You're inside the 10-yard line, not the red zone. You're inside the 10-yard line. Where are the rushing attempts? It's because he wants to always lean back into having him throw. He talks about that fortuitous bust play after the game, right? Again, back to my point on him not learning his lessons on stuff and that he wants to parse it up to luck. This is what I say when I say this is not just a fan thing with the Rams. This is a front office coaching thing. Because he goes right after the game and he goes, yeah, that was just probably a fortuitous bust. That's sometimes you just get lucky with that type of stuff. It's like, no, you're so pass heavy, the defense can anticipate it. You have so gone away from even qualifyingly threatening the run in that situation that they can get into all of the depth of what you're trying to do throwing the ball and lock more in on what you're doing and throwing the ball and do some freelance stuff like DeMarcus did in that moment because you're so predictable in your modus operandi. And that's the part where McVay just doesn't want to kind of own up to this, in my opinion. And I hope he doesn't once again, Brendan.
Mm-hmm.
Hope he doesn't want.
Yeah, and you know, this goes back to even at the end of the half. Remember, they had the ball, they were up. They could have at least ended the second half up, if not maybe go get points. But then I think they passed it 3 times. I think like 10 seconds come off the clock. We got the ball back. We scored the touchdown and never gave up the lead. So it's even beyond. Point. Yeah.
That's that management side as a coach. And you've got to be aware of this. You're managing the game. And it's just like a coach that manages a bullpen in baseball. Like you've got to be there in managing the clock. And that when you get leads, there's an art form to getting a lead and being able to manage that lead through. And I think it's one of the places that McDonald's very underrated in. And that I know he had heavy influence on Kubiak in this last year. And understanding this. And I'm sure some of it he gets from the Harbaugh brothers, who definitely have a lot of this in their way that they've rolled their teams in the past too. And that you know the number of finite possessions you have in an NFL game. And you know what you can do clockwise to kind of take those in out. And you can know when you want to go for and be aggressive and when you want to be a little bit safer, to your point. Especially with what's going at play with your defense, being able to get stops or not get stops. I don't know if McVay takes all of that into account. He seems more of a gut guy to me, and he seems more of a guy that's going to lean into the aggressive stance of things for both good and bad, where there's a little bit more maybe of an opening there for him to be a little bit more tactical in his approach, Brendan.
Yeah.
Well, thank you there, Femi. Appreciate you. And all of you guys, thank you for all the donations. You guys are just amazing as ever here on both of our channels there. So very much appreciated. So Brandon, let's turn this forward here to your bottom line on I don't really want to go like necessarily game by game, but if you can give me, because I think we're both going to look at the schedule and see this as quantitatively going to have more wins than anything else. So what's more interesting to me is to look at where you have the losses in the final schedule or the final record here for the Seattle Seahawks.
I do think we lose to Denver. I do. I feel like we lose one of the games to the Rams. Probably the road game, but it could be either one. I don't know if home away means that much when you're playing a team like the Rams. They don't necessarily... Yeah. And then I kind of want to pick an oddball game. I kind of want to pick like the Cowboys, just their offense just comes in and sets the world on fire for 1 week. But more realistically, you're probably looking at something like that Eagles game. Especially if we're riding a big winning streak going to that game, which if you look at the schedule, there's a pretty good chance of that. So I guess I would go there. If there's a fourth loss, I'm not sure which one I would pick right now. Like maybe the Niners, but that's right after the bye week, which I feel like helps.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very similar in certain ways. I do have, I feel like there's going to be a home game in there you lose somewhere. I don't know if you go undefeated at home. And I think like the Charger game early season, their offensive line, full strength. They've got McDaniel coming in there. They could be a bit of a problem in that game early on. That's one that I've got in there. I do have one of the Rams like you do on that side. We both got the Broncos on that. And I think it's one of the games you mentioned, you were kind of dancing around it. But I think what it is that you take the 49ers, Cowboys, and Eagles game. I think you're in agreement on this. One of those three is probably a loss, and you win the other two. Mm-hmm. That would be and that's where I get to a 13-4 as far as my final outlook on the season.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. That Cowboys game just kind of, I got a funny feeling. But
I get it.
maybe they'll trade George Pickens before the season starts and this whole thing is moot, because if they do that, then they're not nearly as interesting.
Yeah, and it's it is. We just saw the Cowboys do this with Micah Parsons the prior year, right? So they definitely have been willing to move at times to do this type of stuff. Receiving core is tough there for them. So if you're looking to move them, it's what are you doing at the receiver position? Is there a different trade you're looking to make to kind of reinforce that? Because certainly was helping CeeDee Lamb out to have a little bit more of the, they got the Marquez Valdez-Scantling essentially is their number two behind Pickens right now. So there's got to be some other move you're looking to do. But hey, maybe go and talk to the Jets again. And you're like, hey, we got the Williams trade last year done. Let's get another one done here. And you send us Wilson and you move Pickens, get a pick back for him, and then you get Wilson, and you got a little bit of like tit for tat there. Maybe they look at it like that's the way they go. But I agree with you. I think it's one of those three in there where you've got the Niners, or you got the Eagles, the Niners, and that Cowboy game. And I think just one of those three in that spot. It's a tough little roll there. One of those is probably going to be an L on that, but still, you come out 13 wins, Brendan. I think that does put you, and you had 13 wins as well, right? Bottom line on yours.
Yeah, 13 or 14. 13 or 14.
13, 14.
I can't decide yet. I got to think about it a little bit more.
And so that would put us with, by your estimation, the first round bye. So I guess the big final question on this is do you feel like with this schedule, the Seattle, yes, I know the Seattle can repeat. Does your gut say they will repeat?
I guess I would probably say yes, because I don't think anybody can come out of the AFC and intimidate me. Like if we play Denver, we're like, okay, but that's going to be a neutral site. It's going to be late in the season. And there's some matchup things there that I like maybe Houston, but they've got a lot to prove offensively, right? I can't really be intimidated by what they're doing right now. What the Ravens in the first year of the new head coach? No. So if you make it, and your main obstacle to making it is the Rams right now, I think you got to feel good about it, whoever it may be, with the information we have right now.
Especially understanding that in anticipation of getting that number one seed in the home field advance throughout the playoffs, the power that has wielded for you in the past when you have had it. And every single time you've had that number one seed, you have gone to the Super Bowl. And as Brendan just said, you're then likely to play a lesser team in the Super Bowl. I think the AFC does come forward this year. I still think the NFC is stronger. I think that we're still stronger than any team coming out of the AFC, that we would be favored in that game. And I think you got a great chance at coming back and repeating this season because of these kind of parameters that are set up for you here. And that this is made to be very much in place for you to get this done. So ideal schedule, Brendan. It's not necessarily the best, easiest schedule ever, but it's, I think, ideally set up for you to be able to go out here and get that repeat in play. And it's got me very excited for this upcoming season, man.
Yeah, me too.
Well, any final thoughts from you, Brendan, on this schedule that we didn't maybe cover, or any items that you wanted to kind of talk about?
I think we already went over everything, man. The bye week, the end of the season gauntlet. By the way, one nice thing about that is we'll have Charbonnet back by that point, probably. So yeah, that's one thing to think about. Like if Charbonnet can get back to 100% at some point this season, which I don't know if he will, that's probably your best running back. I would take him over Price as a rookie for sure.
I would estimate as well too. And especially because then he gives you the opportunity to really let him cement into the third down back role. So you don't have to put Jadarian in that role. And then you let Jadarian be in his best position to succeed too. Which is probably early down back and under center stuff mainly. That's where he's probably better ideally suited to go. So yeah, you will get Charbonnet back hopefully sooner or later. Sounds like the rehab's going well with him, which is very encouraging. And get this, as we saw last year, when you got a running back split backfield like that, you can be very, very dangerous with keeping those guys fresh and just sending waves at them. If you guys are watching here, please over on Brendan's side, Seahawks Brendan Nelson, hit that like button and do get subbed up to Seahawks Brendan Nelson. He does daily coverage here, right? Press I on that side of it with the Bleach Report and stuff. So do get over there on that side of it too. All is well over in the Hawks Nest. Please hit the like button as well. Get subbed up on this. We're going to be doing a little bit of some hibernation here, folks. So it'll be a bit of time before we come back unless we've got some major deal that comes down the line that needs to be discussed and talked about. But it's been another great season with you, Brendan, and us doing this for 5 years now. I think we've been going and rolling here doing our collabs, and I've had a great time with you doing it. We got to really celebrate a year in totality that was just so rewarding for both of us. I've said it to you before, but it's really cool to be able to experience this with community, but also to experience it with someone like yourself that we've had to go through so many real tough conversations over the past couple of years early on here to get to this place of things that weren't always the funnest of conversations because they led to so much drama and anger has had times in the fan base and what you had to kind of turn over as far as possibilities. But
100%.
We're in heaven now, brother. We're in heaven now.
Life is good.
Life is good. Your Seahawks are Super Bowl champions and they're well set up to eventually go out there and repeat now here in 2026. You should be hyped up. You should be on the edge of your seat. You should be ready for the NFL season right now. But just in case you need a reminder, me and Brendan are going to let you know on our way out the door. Don't you ever forget, Seahawks fans, you're getting ready to repeat. Get on deck, get on point, and get ready for this. I know you're watching Mariners, but just don't you forget about this Seahawks football team because they're getting ready to do some special things. So keep it at the forefront of your mind, and don't you ever forget. Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.